listening to Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, we're going to have a kind of part two on the city news today. We had the mayor yesterday, and we have Victoria today. Not for rebuttal, though, because y'all are pretty much on the same page. From what I hear, you know, before the show, when I kind of, go with the mayor or whomever the guest is, what we're talking about, he was very complimentary about you. He said you're doing a real service to the community by your position on the COG, the Council of Governments. And
I take that responsibility seriously.
Well, he's very enthusiastic about the possibility of some of that road money coming this way.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
We already we were able to secure construction funding for the 174 project, which will add a lane from Elk to Wicker Hill on both sides of 174. And so we only had engineering and design funding, and through the COG, we were able to get the construction funds. So that moved up from I don't know, it's pretty far out there.
When you say Wicker Hill, I'm trying to put it in my head.
There used to be a water, some kind of water store and a dog daycare that sat right there on that corner.
Is it going to go past that massive enterprise intersection, rather?
Hewlin? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it goes past
well,
Hewlin.
that's good.
Exactly.
Well, good. Road construction on 174 shouldn't slow anything down.
It's going to slow everything down.
Yeah, and we're also talking about the expansion of the highway and all that. So
35.
Yeah, it's going to be entertaining.
TxDOT is finally given some attention to the west side. There's always stuff happening in Dallas and on the east side of town, but finally they're making their way over here. The 917 improvements, McAllister improvements. We're like, finally.
Finally. I was going to ask you about a road that I've always asked about after the commercials are starting out. We also talk about the budget and whatnot, and some of the things you've been get a lot of feedback on it, particularly at the budget and the rates and stuff like that. I'm sure you had a lot of conversation directed during. Has it been mostly okay? I mean, mostly pleasant, or has there been some a bit
I think
intense?
There's frustration. There's general wanting to understand things better. The good thing about this season is people start paying attention and getting involved and asking questions, and I am all for that. I will gladly take a phone call, answer emails.
That's part of the job, right?
It is. It's a lot easier to explain, though, over the phone. I kind of mimic what the mayor always says: send me your phone number and let's chat about it. And I'm happy to meet for coffee or just follow up. I like it when the parents and stuff grab me when we're dropping off at school or pick up and ask questions.
You really like that? I mean,
I do.
Don't you have a zone of space, privacy, whatever?
I would much rather us have a dialogue, a healthy dialogue, and an individual get the opportunity to ask the questions and get the answer straight from me instead of hearsay, particularly on social media. And even sometimes through an email or a text message, you can was the infliction here or here? And so I would much rather just have a casual conversation about anything related to the city, what we're working on, what we're paying for. We try to be transparent, but sometimes even understanding. And I face this too, every week or right before a meeting, we get our packet and we read through things, but there's still an element of something that you will catch or grab your attention in a presentation that you didn't read yourself, by looking at those slides. So there's value in having conversations. And I grew up here. I'm an open book. I'm easily accessible. And that's what I pride myself in.
Well, after this little sponsor run, I'm going to ask you about the thought processes behind the budget. I know that some hard choices are made. Yeah,
and it's not easy, but fortunately, we've had really good dialogue amongst the council, and we've really vetted and combed through, and we're all equally, I believe, on the same page and same understanding, which hasn't always been the case. But the mayor spoke to this yesterday of when he was elected a few months before me, but when we were first put on council, the tax rate was above 70 cents, and I was in absolute agreement that was high. And it's amazing to me that at that tax rate, we weren't taking care of the things that we should have been. Now, there's elements of things that we didn't anticipate. weather plays into stuff. The mayor always mentions this. He's good about that, remembering, when we've had ice storms or severe droughts that we had in previous summers. This spring we're very fortunate. We got a lot more rain than we usually do, and we got rain into the summer in June, in July. And so there's elements that we just can't anticipate and we haven't always budgeted well for. But in particular, we know the last 2 years, and I've said this almost the last 3 or 4 times I've been on your show, we know we should be budgeting about $5 million a year for street repairs, and that is just keeping them at their current condition. That's not rebuilds. That's not complete cutouts and redos. That's just fixing potholes and asphalt patches, just to keep them at the condition that they are. That's about $5 million is what we should be budgeting, and at the current tax rate last year and this year, we budgeted $1.2 million. So there's a big gap.
Yeah. Well, like I said, after the sponsors run. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, plug your sponsors. I get started.
I know. I just like, okay, there you go. All right. Of course, Otto. You still using our place as a bribe for kid behavior in church?
I do. Well, not just bribes, but the day before, our last Friday together, the kids and I, before summer ended, we went to our place. That was their treat.
Okay. How are they doing in school?
They're enjoying it. Oliver was dying to get back.
Really?
Audrey's adjusting.
4th grade?
4th grade.
And 1st grade?
Second
grade. Okay. Well, no problems there, huh?
No. They're just...
At Nola Dunn, right?
Yeah. We have a great home campus. I mean, we just have such a cute little community. Everybody supports one another. I mean, I love our school.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time there.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're like a room mom or something like that?
Room mom, PTO.
What PTO, of course. There's a group that you joined. Victoria's going to join it.
My husband likes to say, if there's a job available that doesn't pay, I'll most likely sign up for it.
How nice. Well, your poor husband.
He's pretty accustomed to it. We've been together for like 17 years now.
Yeah. How about that? When I met him, he seemed like a very flexible guy, is the best way to put it.
He's so supportive.
Yeah.
And the way he says it is like, hey, we want someone doing it that's interested in it. I'm all for it.
Right.
He just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah. As far as Gina's, I've been there. I've been having some of the other things other than the pizza. Just and that meatball sandwich is good.
Yep. Philip likes the meatball sandwich.
And
then they came out with like a baked ziti.
I've had that twice.
Philip did that, and it was really good. Mm-hmm. I just love like the Gina's special pizza. I just take the pork off of it. But it has all these delicious toppings.
Because you're Jewish?
I
didn't know
don't
you were
eat pork.
Jewish. Oh, okay.
I haven't eaten pork since I was like 6 or so.
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't eat pork. It fit great when I worked at the hospital because there it was always pork free. I didn't have to worry.
Well, anyway, on to the next one. And thank you to Wild Cigar. And they got several specials going on during the summer. A lot of vendors are coming by. They're trying to have like something at least every other Saturday or Friday, somewhere in the weekends. And,
it is such a nice venue.
And football's starting soon.
Hey.
It's a good place to have a smoke, have a drink, watch the ball game.
Set up shop, watch some ball games. Because they've got a lot of screens in there.
But it's not like blowing you out. Like you go to some sports bars and you just get overwhelmed, sensory overload.
It's so loud.
It's loud. You got 19 screens, and you're like, "Which game am I watching?" It's a lot more relaxed.
Well, and there's also some events coming up, like the Harvest Moon Festival, and so hopefully those events that are out at Chisenhall will drive some more traffic to those awesome businesses that are in that complex.
There's a bunch of them starting up. That roasted beanery. They have that. Was it poke salad? I don't know what that is. But
the poke bowl.
Okay, yeah.
I have friends that love it. Like eat there at lunch almost every day.
Of course, poke salad is some southern thing.
Southern Charm Bakery.
Yeah.
Oh my, delicious.
Yeah, our friend though at Doughboys had to retire because of health issues. I'm afraid, and that is unfortunate.
He was such a good fit too.
Yeah.
I loved him.
Also, thank you to our friends over at Old Pro Roofing. I tell people this all the time to have your roof checked out because what John is telling me, he's at 817-734-2756. He's telling me that some of the insurance companies are being more and more difficult about dealing with claims. And if you,
I believe it.
Well, and they're like saying on your roof, a few holes in the roof. That's no big deal. Put a tarp over it, you're good. They're trying every way they can. Now I will give a shout out to my insurance company because they handled my claim in June very, very well. It was Texas Farm Bureau, and I was very satisfied with the results. So, and John tells me that The TFB is one of the easiest ones to deal with, but some of them, they'll try to get out of paying.
Oh yeah.
So,
my brother faced this, and Old Pro is the one who put his roof on, but they went over and over. I mean, I think it was drawn out over a year. He could not get the insurance. I mean, he did have holes. That was the amazing part. It's like, well, like you said, just deal with it.
Well, John also will point out to you that they've doubled the premium or the deductible. That's the word. The deductible on roof damage. I mean, other things, 1%, 2% for wind and hail damage on roofs. And so if you have a typical home in Burleson, you're going to be out of pocket maybe anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 before they even put one shingle on. Yeah. So you need to make sure that it's better to have it repaired than have replaced. And so call him 817-734-2756, and he'll come right out there and check it out. Also, if you're thinking of buying or selling in this area, Jeff Kelly's the man. He's got several houses. He's got some property too, and property that didn't come by easily in this area of the county. There's a piece out in Alvarado. Here's a piece off of Chisholm Trail.
Ooh, Chisholm Trail.
Yeah.
That's where the growth's happening.
And I don't remember exactly. It's more than a couple acres.
Oh.
And so it's so give him a call over at 817-781-0546 or contact him at jeffkellyrealty.com. He's with the Wethington Agency, which is local folks, so they know the industry. As far as the interest rates and all this other stuff, I talked to my friend Candy Gow over at Camco just last week. In fact, her daughter was on the show last Tuesday. I don't know if you saw the colorectal cancer.
Oh, yeah.
So that's her daughter.
I didn't know that. I was her daughter.
Yeah, and she's and Candy was saying the rates are kind of drifting down, but they would also say, look, you can't change the price of your house, but you can change the rates. And so if you want a house, get it, and then you can always refinance it. So and what'll happen if the rates drop, the price of the house goes up.
Right.
And I don't want to get into all the politics, but if some of these proposals I'm reading about in the next administration come to pass, you better get your house now. And that's not me being Mr. Right Wing. It's just some of the plans they're talking about are going to dramatically affect the price of housing in terms like environmental requirements, things of that nature. So anyway, that's just my little political segue for today. Also, lastly, the Railroaders, their season's coming to an end soon with regular season, but they made the playoffs. They're number one in their division. And so I think the Labor Day weekend's their last series, regular season series, and then the playoffs. And I'm going to try to get Kay Goodell on the show pretty soon again, because last time, we've been kind of missing. I had our schedule for the show, and she got stuck in an airport in Kansas City. And so I had to, push her back a week. And then something came up that morning with the Railroaders that she had to attend to. So we've had some, she's had a hard time getting over here. So
what I've loved is the partnerships that they've created this season. Tomorrow night is the animal shelter. They've partnered with the Burleson Animal Shelter. So $5 of every ticket sold goes straight to the animal shelter. And I just think those kind of partnerships are phenomenal. It spreads the word. It encourages new participation, different participation.
Right. They've had several of the nonprofits.
Yeah,
and
almost every nonprofit locally has had a night.
Well, they're going to be interesting because all the nonprofits are going to be here on the 19th of September. And when I throw that ad up there, I'm sure they're going to have a lot of comments and positives. They've been very, very appreciative of what they've done for them. I'm trying to get all these shared here while I'm thinking about it. Boom, boom, boom. And this is a part Taylor just cracks up. You think I'd know how to do this by now?
I don't. So.
Well, it's just the thing is I don't have the list to put it on.
Yeah.
Is they keep moving the players on it, and it's like, okay, where is that? Isn't like the same listing? But anyway, that's just high tech talk. I didn't want to talk all of my vast listening audience's head. Anyway, back to the budget and all that fun stuff. I'm sure everybody comments on the budget.
Right.
My bet is how many people actually have read the budget.
I don't know.
That's another conversation. But they know what their piece of it is.
Right.
And I'm sure everybody thinks that their piece of it that's what the city should be focused on.
Right.
All right. But the consensus is in streets, the surveys and all that.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
I mean,
when they talk about the streets, what are they saying about them?
They want them repaired, that they're potholes are not being filled, that there's cracks, that they're uneven, I went to discount tire a couple days ago to get my tires rotated, and a friend of mine who lives off of 714, her daughter was there getting a tire replaced. Well, she had to buy all 4 tires because she hit a pothole. It blew out her tire. It bent the rim. And that's the stuff that that's not unusual. We are hearing that.
Tires ain't cheap anymore either. Or they never work cheap.
There goes like $800 or $900.
Easily.
So, I told her, well, interesting that you complain about that right now because, that's what we're facing. We are significantly...
Well, there's our friend Brandon. Funny enough, I saw a comment on the government Facebook page where they're upset with the road construction. Do you want to keep it? Want it fixed or not? Yeah.
Let me just tell you, talking about that 174 lane expansion.
It's going to be inconvenient.
It is going to be an issue. I mean, we think traffic on 174 is a nightmare right now. Wait till we're down to 1 lane on each side because they're building an additional lane, and then I had a good conversation with a citizen who was frustrated about the vote on the intelligent traffic system that passed. I was the lone no vote, but we're going to essentially implement a system that will help us have control of our lights. But then we have this major construction project coming. So it won't matter if we can turn every light green on 174. You're still going to be sitting there because it's under construction for the next how many years? We don't even know.
And I'm just thinking of all the businesses in that intersection.
Oh, I know. I'm scared.
And I mean, we're not talking about small ones either.
No.
Kroger and H-E-B and the theater.
No,
and
we're talking about sandwich shops, coffee shops, where you get your dry cleaning done, where you get your insurance.
Well, so that brings me up to another point is that when I go to H-E-B from my house, I live on the east side of the highway. I take 714.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And apparently the secret's out because that used to be, pretty mild traffic now.
Oh, no, it's busy.
It's busy now.
My parents live off 714 and 731, so I use that route a lot.
And those roads are beat to pieces. And I don't know who's responsible.
It's partially city, partially county.
Yeah.
And it is long range. We plan it's in the plans to expand to a 4-lane divided, but that is long range. There is no design. There's no engineering. And first step would be purchasing right away. And
also taking down those trees, which
there
is
are landowners that say no already. Like, we're not willing to sell that. So.
Well, I know, but you don't want to use the eminent domain card.
We try our absolute hardest not to do that.
It may come to that, but you don't want that to happen because it's not a good look.
Yeah.
And people don't understand it. Eminent domain is legal and constitutional, but they don't see it that way.
Well, we don't really. Before, it was definitely it was big government. Taking advantage of. I want this. We want this, and we're going to do it whether you agree or not. Now it is absolutely your last ditch effort because you have to have so many. It's drawn out. 18 months is the shortest timeline you can anticipate. Lots of lawyer fees. It's all drawn out. And we would much rather, in my opinion, if the city or the county needed a piece of my land, I would much rather have a conversation with a person that I know. A lot of times we send out Alex Phillips because everybody knows Alex and he knows how to, shoot the bull and say, listen, this is where these are our options. This is where we're at. And he knows how to approach people. And I would much rather be approached by an Alex if it came to my land than, some guy from Austin who doesn't know Burleson politics, who doesn't understand our community, who is not invested here, isn't going to understand that we don't want to remove this entire row of beautiful, long living trees.
You're right. This may be well before your time. You may have been living in Burleson. But I remember in 94, when we moved out to where we are now, we still live in the same house. Renfro was like 714. It was 2-lane blacktop, asphalt, a lot of beat up stuff, very narrow bridge, trees very close. So, the kids are telling me in my high school classes about numerous accidents taking place.
Yeah.
Because, in the dark, it was unlit and all this, and they'd put their car into a tree or whatever. But then they expanded it, right? But boy, it was ecologically, that's the word, devastating because of all those trees.
I know. I do remember that, actually.
Yeah, and then you remember right now, I know they're doing it in prep work for expansion of Renfrew further, and they're doing the same thing. They're shredding some trees.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a big tree hugging green guy or anything like that, but I do have some environmental conscience.
We do have to have
about
trees to have oxygen,
and
we do like the way they help things look
and keep things cool.
Cool. Yeah, we love some shade in Texas. It's absolutely necessary.
Well, it keeps my electric bill down.
I mean, the mayor mentioned this in our meeting last night. We celebrated 817 Day, which is, August 17th. There isn't our economic development team is just continuously creative in trying to find ways to rally our community, to increase activity and involvement. And so 817 Day came about a couple of years ago, and we've sponsored an ice cream truck or two, and we give for a certain amount. We buy a certain amount, and then we hand those out for free. And so Larry and I were at the Brick. And so last night the mayor said, well, did y'all have any shade? And there was one tree that we kept gathering around because it was so hot.
Well, it is at the plaza too. I know that, farmers market uses, awnings and stuff, and it helps, but it's still pretty hot.
It is hot.
Well, see, when we voted for you said no more hot days.
I don't think I said that.
No, you don't think you said that? I'll check my vote.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, fine. Anyway.
I like to think I have good connections with the man upstairs, but not that good. I don't control the weather.
Yeah. Well, back to 714, because that big construction project out there is going to...
when we're working on 174, even more traffic is going to go on 714. And it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So, Brandon, help us spread the word that improvements are coming. We're just going to have to be patient. It's like those terrible slogans on 35 that it's like, everyone... there's always construction on 35. It's like never ending. And it always says, have patience. It'll get better. And you're like, when? When is it going to get better?
It's like, it reminds me about construction is like, I know a lot of people are all excited about that specs coming in, and you drive by and you see guys standing around and say, get to work, 2-minute break, that's all you need, get back to work, hurry up,
I mean, it's Fort Worth city limits.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, people get impatient with construction of any kind.
Oh, that's the same thing about Alley Cats. It's funny, is last year at 817 Day, that was the construction site, that was one of our stops. We went and the guys were all stressing out because they were told, basically, you work the entire time you're out here. Don't take a single break unless, it's your designated break. And there you go, Brandon. I love when TxDOT basically said I-35 construction will never be completed. It's true.
It's true. I mean, as soon as they finish it, they'll go back south and do it again. Well, that's just, not that people make money in road construction in this state. Anyway. Yeah. Well, anyway.
We got to keep traffic moving.
I know, and I don't begrudge them that.
And in Texas, we like our cars.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It is.
We like our cars. This is another part of my liberal side, if you will. I like mass transit, but we're never going to see it here.
It cost in the billions.
Yeah, that and
we had the property that has been in the we've had talks about the Alsbury and Hewlin property for a little while. The city owned 14 acres that they had bought, I don't know, 07, sometime around there. And that was supposed to be that was our trans-oriented district. That's where the train station was going to be. And then the further and further we got away, the numbers were just unrealistic. And so then we revisited that opportunity as there's just not a lot of big sections of space in Burleson that are left for us to make long-range plan happen. And
this expansion you talk about on Wilshire, is this something, because that's a state highway, right?
Yeah.
Is this under Burleson City control, though, about how and who and what built and all that?
No, that's TxDOT.
Okay. Because I know that we have local people.
We, as a city, to help move the project along, we helped fund. And so sometimes you do this, and actually the mayor commented on the county's potential bond program. And that's an element of, Dan and I both sat on the steering committee as well as Alex, and we looked, trying to create our first master thoroughfare plan for the county so that we're all speaking from the same documents so that we know Burleson is growing out this direction. We know Godley's growing this direction, and Joshua. And so how do we make our efforts as individual cities and municipalities match up with what others are doing so we're not unnecessarily paying extra from all of these different tax bases? How can we maximize our dollars and be smart about how we're designing things and we're communicating? So we're having this master thoroughfare, it's near completion, but a piece of that is, a wish list of, okay, we know these areas have high traffic, high accidents and safety concerns. On your wish list as a county, how could you move traffic off this area, or how could you improve the safety at this intersection? And then it kind of got whittled down to, these are the projects that they kind of call them low-hanging fruit, of things that are achievable. They're not astronomically priced, but could make significant improvements all over the county. And then that was presented to the commissioner's court, and then potentially a future bond program that would help us move some of these projects along. They're not necessarily the city of Burleson's jurisdiction or city of Burleson's control, but to help TxDOT. Inevitably, all across our state, there are projects that TxDOT thinks are going to happen that don't. Either they came in significantly more expensive than were originally budgeted. I think the last time I was in a meeting, I heard of a project that was like initially budgeted at $32 million and now it's $68 million. Well, they don't have the funding for that gap. So that 32 will get reallocated across our state somewhere to a project that's ready to move dirt. And so by, locally, 174 is an example of that. We as a city had the resources available to move that lane expansion, the project as a whole. If we help TxDOT with design and
the mayor mentioned that about Parker County, getting
that's exactly how
big
Parker
piece of the action.
And you go over there and it looks significantly different. The improvements to I-20. Have any insight?
Brandon has another. Do you have any insight into the Renfro expansion project to make it 4 lanes all the way down to 602? I read about it at some point, but I'm not sure about status. The DOT website is ambiguous. Two comments to that. Brandon, you're on the DOT website.
Good luck.
Watch some more sports, son. Anyway, but
it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
And my understanding, it's green light, go. I want to say construction is supposed to start in 26, but Brandon, let me get back to you on that. When we last had our steering committee meeting for the county thoroughfare plan, our district TxDOT representative is named Daniel, and he said, he assures us that's ready to go. And that project has been talked about 20 years.
But
it's absurd.
Here's a kind of an off-topic conversation or a question about the road construction. I personally like to use as many local people as possible. I know there's a bid process. I know there's, there's a blind bid process, right? And
Closed bid, and we have to go with lowest.
Right.
Which sometimes bites us in the rear.
Yes, I know.
A citizen that I spoke to said, what's to say that 174 gets under construction, that it can take 2 years, it could take 6 years, it could take 10 years, because sometimes there's no incentive for them to move their butts.
Right. I would like to.
We're the ones taking all the heat for it.
But that's what McClendon Construction does, right?
He does, but
I know. And he has to play by the rules, and he gets it, and that's not what I'm getting at. I just thought, if it's possible, I like to see local guys get it, because it hires our people, and we know where to find Dan and that kind of stuff, and he'd have.
But there are other local-ish people that Dan will say, hey, I've done business with that person, or I know he's invaluable when it comes to our streets and road projects.
I understand the blind bid process, and Dan fully understands it as well. I just like to see local businesses get the first crack at it if possible. But
we really have to put a focus. It goes beyond, I'm loving the pushes of, right now I'm seeing memes and things that say support local, because those are the businesses that are sponsoring your T-ball team, your dance team,
your podcasts.
Your podcast. They're giving locally. But even more importantly than that, it's the multiplier factor of when we stay in the city limits of Burleson, that comes back. That's our sales tax base.
Multiplier effect. You learned that in economics, didn't you?
I sure did. I had this awesome economics teacher.
Way back then.
I barely held on sometimes, but I survived it. But, this year, going kind of revisiting our tax rate, we we typically budget for about 3% growth in our sales tax, and that staff has felt that is conservative number. We budget for 3, we hope for 5, and this year we got a 1% growth.
Yeah.
And that is across the board. Alex's team kind of did some deep diving and some obvious ones. Home Depot, Lowe's. People aren't doing the home improvement projects like they have in the past. They're holding their money a little tighter. But retail, while the number percentage doesn't seem as impactful, when you think about the retail across our community, it's such a significant number and impact to our sales tax base that it stands out. I mean, we have to do our absolute best to shop local and keep those dollars local, because then, our property tax, when you're looking at these big diagrams that show, out of how we as a city, how our budget is made up of property tax, sales tax, fees, the fees charged to developers and utilities and that kind of thing. And then you have our expenses. Our property tax essentially only covers public safety. So that's police, fire, and public safety communications. Mm-hmm. Everything else is covered, whether that's engineers to design our roads, obviously street repairs, capital improvement programs. All of these other departments are funded by the other avenues of funding other than property tax.
And some of these are dedicated to certain things, like the parks has a dedicated funding source.
It's 4B, so that comes from our sales tax. Right. Yeah. So we, when you're shopping local, whether it's buying a burrito or a pencil, you're supporting your general fund, and then a 0.5 cent goes to each. Our economic development efforts, which is how we recruit employers. It's how we are working on this big trade school with craft masters.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And we're looking at a new business park off of 121. And then it's also our parks program. So golf and recreation center and all the playgrounds and green spaces that we enjoy here in Burleson.
It's still
Plaza.
green at August? They're still green?
I mean, ish. We got a little rain in July.
Yeah, I know.
It's not as bad as we've had seen worse before.
Speaking of parks, this is another segue. Every time I look on Facebook or whether there's an announcement from the parks, well, the splash pad is down. Is it still
right
down?
Now it's running.
Okay, good.
We were standing in front of it handing out ice cream on Saturday.
Okay, so it's working now. But
we were having some kinks at the beginning of the season, and then we learned kind of like an after the fact that a power outage that had happened, like disconnected, did something wonky to the programming. And so, but we had to have the installer come back out. We're like, what is going on with this? Like, staff has done absolutely everything that they've been trained, and they're doing all that they can. Why is this splash pad still not running? So fortunately, fingers crossed, it'll continue through the end of the season. But it's great. It was massively packed on Saturday.
Man, it was.
There were 3 birthday parties going, and I love it. I so enjoy that space.
Well, it's a good addition to the city, because when we were younger, my kids were younger, we'd go to a splash pad kind of place over in North Richland Hills, where my nephews were. And I thought, man, it'd be great. Yeah, I'd have to drive all the way here to do it. It'd be great to do it in Burleson. But this is, back in the 2000s, and when really those kind of amenities were not really part of the plan yet. Now we're at a point where we can provide those.
I mean, they're everywhere. I think the city of Weatherford has like 4 splash pads.
Yeah.
Joshua had one before we did. I worked on that. But I mean, it's when we keep people here, and it's more than just having a water sprayer. That's healthy family time. That is, it's an activity that parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles can take their kids to do and enjoy, and it doesn't. It's not an additional cost. And
well, here's probably part of the budget though that was the hardest decision, that was raising the tax rate.
And we haven't yet.
Well, but that's where it's
been the talk.
Right?
We have all been, the consensus is that we need to fix our streets. And the 1.2 is significantly coming up short to the $5 million that we should be budgeting for streets, to leave them as they are. If we don't start stepping up our game and improvements, the streets are only going to get worse. And eventually they will be in complete failure to where they're not even capable of being patched. They will need to be on a rebuild schedule. And some of these we're going to learn, because we have an asset management program that we contracted for. And so the results of that haven't been presented to the whole council yet, but my understanding is it'll be presented to our I&D committee, and then it'll come to whole council so we can start having data. And I've spoken about this a couple times on your show of, let's rank all of our assets. It's not just streets, but all the buildings, everything that the city is responsible for maintaining. And instead of it being a squeaky wheel gets the money first or the attention first, we need to be making decisions based off of data. And if this particular road is so close to failing, why are we still spending resources fixing its pothole when we need to put it on a reconstruction plan? So essentially, the funds to do patches and fill the potholes and things, that comes out of our everyday maintenance and operation part of our budget. And we can't, essentially, we could either raise our tax rate, create a fee, which a lot of people would say is a tax.
Yeah, same thing.
And by the way, when the legislature comes back in session, there's already a community in Texas that a district court struck down a similar type fee. So the legislature will look at it, and if history tells us anything about local government and what the state legislature likes to do, they like to take tools away from us, not give us more tools.
Yes, that was not something that was common in Texas governing until about the last decade.
Right. So raise your tax rate, create a fee, or put out another bond package. And in my opinion, we need to make more progress in the most recent bond package that before we go out.
A bond would be a hard pull, because
we have so many street needs and roads in this town. It's the largest cry, and it was by far the largest feedback that we received. Every year before we start digging into the budget, we put out a community survey, and we say, what are you wanting fixed, addressed? And number two last year was streets and roads. Number one this year is streets and roads, and they are terrible. You drive down Summercrest, Allsbury is horrendous. Renfro is horrendous. Hidden Creek is tilted, and so we're going to hear more and more of these stories of someone blowing out a tire, causing other issues with cars and people.
Like the suspension out of whack and all that
all
business.
Kinds of things.
Well,
And we have to, this is what we're hearing, and we have to address
any criticism
it. Absolutely.
About
and understandably.
I mean, there are upset people about the tax increase.
I mean,
the rate increases.
Like I said, when I first got on council, the tax rate was above 70 cents, and that was high. It was absolutely imperative that we lowered it. In the last 4 years, well, not last year, but the previous 4 years, we had lowered the tax rate every year. And so we really, in my honest opinion, I think we arbitrarily lowered it too far. But we can only make decisions as good as the information that is given to us. And I don't believe, we have figured out, and we have since replaced a number of staff people throughout the city, that certain things were just not adding up.
That's very tactfully put.
Yeah. So, we could only make those decisions based on the things that were presented to us, and we had to trust that it was accurate. But we have come to the realization, particularly over the last 2 years, that what we're putting into maintaining things is not cutting it. Some of these roads are absolutely, we're going to find out through this asset management program, they're not even worth patching any longer. We need to put them on a reconstruction. So then it goes on capital improvement. We plan out capital improvement for 5 years at a time. And there's some things that'll just get pushed out further and further because it is not financially responsible to do things over another. And that is ultimately what I think some citizens have wanted to be heard on, is, how are we prioritizing? Like, basically, don't build new things if we can't maintain what we have. And I'm hearing those things loud and clear. The thing to consider is, of course, how things are funded in some cases. A park is funded with 4B sales tax, and the maintenance of that park is funded through that sales tax. But installing a new road or a new street program or project before we can adequately take care of everything we currently have in our steed is a different issue.
The alternative to an increase in the rate is to cut spending, right? Well, what are they telling you in their opinions is where you need to cut spending?
And I mean, that's always, we comb through and try to be as we're definitely as fiscally responsible. We want everything accounted for. We ask lots of questions. The good thing is you have a pretty good council right now. Particularly after a couple of us went through a awakening of sometimes information isn't presented in its true fashion, and so
again, tactfully put,
we ask more questions and we want to understand why something's funded over another. Is there any other resource? Last night we approved a grant for one of the parks that that'll help us offset some cost, and we can get a new play set, but then it still needs to be budgeted for like the pour in place and the trees and irrigation and other pieces that will go along with that. But looking for opportunities for partnerships, this is where my seat on the COG board really plays a critical role in trying to find other opportunities. It's not just Burleson when we're looking at 174. Think about all the other communities that sit on 174 that are impacted by the traffic that sits on it every day, day in and day out. Having other routes that go east to west and trying to move traffic off of the major thoroughfares and finding other, alleviating routes and things. So.
But I'm just saying, do people call you up or text you or email you and say, you're spending too much money on X? Our streets are terrible. You need to fix those. So cut money from this project or that project. And
typically I hear parks.
Parks, yeah. And that's what I was thinking you probably hear too. And I'm like, but knowing that they're separately funded, it's not even possible, is it?
It doesn't. We can't use 4B funding to fix a pothole.
Well,
but as I mentioned earlier, an element of your sales tax does. There's a cent that goes to the general fund. The general fund is split between maintenance and operations, so that's how we pay for staff. That's how we pay for everyday maintenance, and then we have the INS, which is our debt. And so we are turning over everything that we possibly can, pinching where we can. Last night, we also approved a refinancing similar to when you go for a when you go do your mortgage, if you want a lower rate.
Camco Mortgage,
there you go.
Candy Gow and Sammy Joe Campbell.
There was an opportunity to, refinance some of our bonds to pay down things faster and use that funding that was available by refinancing toward other things. And I think it freed up a little over $1 million. And so, those are things that we are all looking for. We have a staff that's dedicated for that. We're not being frivolous. This isn't, if you saw in the supplemental package, this year is one of the fewest supplementals we have, packages we've approved in all the years I've sat on council. And those are the things that on top of on top of their budget, basically from last year, these are their wish list things, and every single department has it. And before it even came to council, city management has to vet through those and say, look, this is just unrealistic, or, I can try, or maybe in 10 years.
Yeah. So my pet project, if you will, and I don't expect this to be a high priority, is all that business around Hidden Creek Golf Course and the softball fields. I talked with the mayor yesterday about that a little bit. And for a time, there seemed to be progress towards making that area into a hotel, convention, tourist, a destination, right?
Yeah.
Is that? But he said, we'll have to talk about that on the next show, kind of thing, because you have a budget in front of you and you have streets that need repair. Is that still? So
if a hotel conference center were to happen, that's going to be private. Yes, we have over the years, honestly, since 2007 2008, sometime in there, and then I worked on it as a city employee back in 2011. The city has had interest in pursuing some type of hotel conference center. There's nothing really south of Fort Worth.
Oh, it'd be great business.
It'd be great.
Right on the highway like that, and a golf course, and the proximity to Fort Worth.
There's the property that's closer to 35 in Hidden Creek, and then there's the softball fields. And we honestly have to, while over the years we have lumped them together, there's part of me that just says we need to look at them separately, because the park portion, it has to go to voters before we can touch it and do anything else other than what it currently serves as.
Well, if you have a fields already set up, like Mayor said, then I think that'll be a fairly easy vote. But those fields are past
they're
usability. They're not usable anymore.
They're really not.
And they're actually dangerous.
They are.
To play on, a lot of break a leg on those things. But
so that's something we've put out to the citizens. What a piece of it is relocating those softball fields, but what else would you like to see on that property?
Oh, there's so many ideas.
And that with the property was another thing I've heard questions about. Okay, well, we don't need that. Why don't you just sell it? Well, the 14 acres that the city has owned since like 2007 or something is if we sold that portion, that would go back to the general fund. The other two that if we sold the remainder of the 55 or so acres, it would be split between 4A and 4B because those are the two funding sources that we used. So those would not go back to the general fund. But that was a legitimate question. And so much of this sometimes it's just understanding. It's so big picture that tell me how this works. And that's what I enjoy speaking with citizens about so that we can come to a better understanding of where funds can be used, what funds are being used for what. And but there's so many restrictions on how we use our tax dollars.
Well, see, I'm in my vision of the Brad and Robin Allard Convention Center.
Yeah.
And hotel.
You going to put in a chunk of money for that?
I just figured,
we just name it after.
Yeah, right. It's an honorific. Well, but see, I'm glad we have Pathway, and I'm glad we have First Baptist to provide spaces for these things, but it does limit you somewhat. I mean, I can't see.
I heard you yesterday.
Yeah, certain things going into to First Baptist in particular. You know them. Well, of course, I'm a member, so I know them well. But the point is that Cleburne's got a decent enough convention center. It's fine. Yeah.
But I don't want to go to spend my money in Cleburne. I want you to spend your money in Burleson.
And
there's so much opportunity, between golf tournaments and baseball tournaments that they could utilize a nicer hotel, but also the Rotary Club meetings. We need rooms that can have meetings for 40 people. We need rooms that can hold 100, 200, 300 people. I don't really know. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, but if you wanted like a regional,
true conference, there's
regional conventions.
Our law enforcement goes to conferences all over the United States. What if Burleson hosted that? Fire conferences. My daughter dances competitively, and I would love to host one of those dance competitions in Burleson instead of driving to Waxahachie or Denton or Las Colinas. Come to Burleson.
Yeah.
Buy from our Chick-fil-A and our sandwich shops and shop at our boutiques during your breaks. Because I've done all of those things in all the communities I've visited.
Sure, but is this is it on hold, or at least it's still in the wish stage because of the priority that the media is causing?
The hotel study is complete, and so we do know that there's some interested developers that are looking and would consider our community. Where all of that stands, conversations to be had. It's not going to happen next year, or by the end of this year. It's going to take some time. We want to make sure that whatever we put out to the public, like you said, first we need to make sure we know specifically what space they're wanting. Is it just on the golf course as it sits, that parking lot, that where the clubhouse currently is, or is it more? If it's more, how much more? Is it, options for relocating those softball fields? All of these things that community has to weigh in on. We can't unanimously as a board make those decisions.
I hope to be around if and when this happens.
I think it could. I really do. And this council is very interested in the convention space hotel conversations. And so we'll just have to see. Our role in that will significantly be weighed by an election, and to see if citizens would support turning that parkland into something else.
And then we were also talking about another piece of property, and the mayor expressed what he thought was going on, and that's that property that Hill College used to be on. On
Renfro.
Yeah. They say they have some interest in it.
We do.
But he wasn't real specific, and I wasn't going to ask.
Because we don't have any specifics.
All right. Well,
it kind of came back
secrets,
of, hey, we have some developers looking at this. What would you like to see in general? We would like to see retail or restaurant space, but similar to what the mayor said yesterday, we don't want it just compacted. We want, and I've said this before too, something that flows. That's the continuation of Old Town. We really need to extend beyond the railroad tracks. And I think that could pull some traffic that way, depending on what is developed there. And
well, plus those apartments, that depot apartments, which have turned out to be okay. I mean, a lot of people were concerned about what they would do to congestion and things. And so far, I haven't heard any real criticisms
because they're
of it.
so close to, they can get on 174 and straight onto 35, or they can get onto
or they can walk to Old Town.
They can walk.
Yeah.
They don't require a car in Old Town.
Walkability
which is really
is a great asset for a community. But I know what I'd like to see. But next Monday Alex is going to be on the show, and I'll ask him a question like, don't we have enough coffee shops? And he'll say, not if somebody wants to put one here.
I mean, that's the thing about private enterprise, right? If tomorrow I decided I wanted to open up a, Walamazoo creation place, then I guess that's my prerogative to go open that.
Well, it's not just that, but they have done studies, I guess.
Yep.
So they've done.
I guess the market studies for sure.
They know put their money in it.
Yeah. They know what they want to pursue, and ultimately, if it doesn't work out, if the market doesn't support that, then something else will go in its place.
Wow, you sound like a Republican.
Ouch.
Ah. Sorry.
I would say I definitely lean more that way. I'm such middle of the road.
So am I these days.
Right leaning.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say. My friends say
sometimes like I'm more conservative than you.
Yeah, you are in some ways. That's fine. But I have my friends say, "What's the matter? You becoming a Democrat?" And I'm like, "You take that back."
Sometimes I think that when you ask me questions, I'm like, "Where is the old Allard from high school that was like, it's this way or no way?"
Well, you learn things after you get to a certain age.
Old.
And hey, good shot. I like that. Anyway, no, I have learned a few things.
I think we all evolve, right? Things change, and also the seasons of life that we're in, right? Having kids and having to deal with public education now, and there's just different perspectives, and we all bring value. That's what's neat about a 7-person council is we all have different perspectives that we can bring to the table and have good dialogue about things that aren't easy. It is not easy to say, hey, can we, if we leave the tax rate here, we can absolutely expect nothing additional to be done with the roads. If we move it here, this is what we can accomplish. If we move it here, this is what we can accomplish. And we all are in agreement that we want to see things happen with our streets and roads. Going
back to our affiliations, you and I are kind of out in the wilderness these days, aren't we? Because
oh my gosh,
because the two parties are so polarized.
They're so polarized.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have a home in either one. I'll speak for myself, but it's tough. Next week I'm going to have an open show and I'm going to talk about these kind of things, and it really is tough because you mentioned before, back 22 years ago, I'd say, well, this is the way it works. Well, after a while, you see, well, that may be what it looks like on paper.
Yeah.
But here's the impact it's having on people.
Absolutely.
And it changes your mind a little bit.
It does.
You can't say, well, that's just the market, No, we don't. No, we need to incorporate other things into our decision making other than
think humanizing
pure market
things,
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to think about how does it impact people, and that has been the tough part about talking about raising a tax rate. And by the way, when I will equally be paying the same tax rate everyone else will if it ends up staying the same or being raised. And although we're all, I think, leaning toward raising it so that we can accomplish more. And we are saying the funding that the additional tax rate would bring, the additional revenue it would create would be earmarked specifically for road maintenance for this coming budget. We can't, we cannot direct future councils, but we can, this upcoming budget, say specifically what we would like to do with that funding. And it's something in the 2.2 or 2.4 million, which add that to the 1.1 is still not 5. We will still be short. There will still be things that we cannot accomplish, even with a raised tax rate. I mentioned, when you think about our property tax, that essentially only covers public safety. Everything else that we have to accomplish as a city, all the services that we have to provide, come up from our other revenue sources. And so I can't encourage everyone enough to shop locally, do business locally. But it's more than just supporting our neighbors. It's giving, rather than spending that $1 in Fort Worth, if you spend it here, that goes back to the pool of money where we can fix a pothole.
It's not just going to Fort Worth. It's also using Amazon, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of that. But
if the delivery does not happen in Burleson, or like something about if the driver's not in Burleson or something strange like that, we don't get that sales tax. I don't know. It's real quirky about Amazon. And I'm just as guilty for convenience reasons, right?
We've used Amazon, but it's not,
I try really hard to buy local.
Yeah,
and it also builds rapport with people, right? Like, I think it is so fun when I go into a store, particularly like City Market, and they're like, hey, we got that turkey bacon that you asked for, because I really only like Oscar Mayer brand, and they had Genio, and I was like, hey, guys.
Turkey bacon.
I know, my husband makes fun of me, but.
Oh, you should.
But it's not real bacon.
It's not.
He also introduced bacon bits to my daughter the other day, and she goes, Dad, is this real bacon?
Bacon bits? Well, maybe not, but whatever. Oh, so don't ask so many questions, youngin. But you know, I've heard that from read about that, about what Amazon and other shipping companies have done. But I've told Robin, and she agrees. You know, it's like if we can get it here, we need to get it here. And only time and most of the stuff we need is here. I mean, we don't have to go outside of Burleson like we did maybe 20 years ago.
If it's not here, then you need to pester Alex and say, Alex, why don't we have this here?
I honestly, if you ask me what restaurant or store or convenience or service Burleson does not have, I'd probably have to give it some thought, because seems like somebody in this town is doing something.
Right.
You know?
And, you know, I know Alex commented with this yesterday of it's not just our 51,000 that the people that spend money and do business in Burleson is closer to 400,000 because of the surrounding communities. We have things that Keene, Alvarado, Joshua, Cleburne don't have. But at the same time, some of that stuff is happening. You know, I think Cleburne's getting their own Olive Garden. So our Olive Garden might slow down a little and things like that. And so
I like Villa Diana and Gina's.
Oh my gosh. Hey, Brandon and I are meeting at Villa Diana later this week, and he said he lives down the road.
Right.
And he has never eaten there.
What is the matter with you, boy? Holy Toledo. I mean, I like that place. I've been going there a lot.
I do too.
You know, and
their portions are huge, and you can eat it for lunch for the next 2 days.
Well, and to throw another shout out to Otto, the baked ziti is 2 meals for me. I don't eat as much as these two.
Oh, even the 10-inch pizza from Gina's, I eat half there, and then I eat half for lunch the next day.
And that's how I justify any food expenditure, whether it be at the grocery store or at
a restaurant.
Yes, it's like, how many meals can I get out of this?
Oh, I hear you.
Gina's is chef's kiss. Okay, whatever. Well, anyway, you know, that's how I do my budget. Yeah. That's another conversation. But,
I know. And we all, I mean, it hurts to hear some of the stories. You know, I understand the households that are on a fixed income. My household is on a single income.
Right.
We all have to watch our pennies, our nickels, our dollars. But when we're looking at what we need to accomplish as a city, unfortunately, with inflation and everything just costing more, there are things that this community expects us to do. And in order for us to accomplish them, we have to consider things like, unfortunately, raising a tax rate.
Well, you're right about the economy, though, because I talked to former and potential sponsors, and almost always they say, I like what you do, I love what you do at the nonprofits, but right now,
you know,
things are just tough.
I'm on PTO, and I told our board, like, hey, things that we have in the past, you know, that had companies say, I'll cover your food for this